All right, good morning, everybody. Let me just fix my mic. Good morning, everybody. It's April. It's May 5th. Man, I was just looking at our calendar. It seems like we actually don't have that much time really left because we don't see each other every day, right? So, pretty cool. Uh, Lots of cool news. Thanks, Haley and everyone, for putting the video together. I think we had a staff meeting and we were trying to watch that together. So I think a lot of people were pretty ecstatic to see what you all have put together for us. I think that's we're really appreciative of that for sure. And yeah, and also we talked about what J8 or Imagine is doing, and Eric and his team are all sewing masks, so that's great too. So that's pretty cool stuff that you guys are all doing. It's always nice to see and hear all the good stuff that you guys are all doing. I know even though we're not like together, I know it's tough, and I know I've been saying that for the past like 6 weeks now. My goodness, right? Is it 6 weeks? I don't know how long it's been, but yeah. I think it's wonderful to see what you guys are doing at home and all of that, and like to think Eric is learning how to sew is quite impressive. So good for you, good for everybody who's doing that as well. And it's always good to see something positive, right? So let's see who's here. So Haley, you're here. Evan, you're here. Joel, Owen, Vici, you're here. Anna here and Eric here and Jenna, you're all here, so that's great. So what I have planned today is that we're sort of moving away from evolution. I was looking at the calendar, and seriously, we really realistically don't have that much time, even though like it's like still 6 weeks till like mid-June. We basically have about 12 streams left, right? Like if it's just two per week. And if we're gonna do some dissections, I think I gotta start moving forward. So we're gonna move away from the evolution, even though the evolution aspect will still come into play because we're talking about life and biodiversity of life. And my first question here is I'm gonna pop this up, and I'm trying to set this up. We're not doing a dissection today, but I'm trying to set this up. Hey Hannah, see if this works when we do dissection. So this is what. I'm just gonna go and make my face a little bit smaller right now first. So let me see if I can do that. So this I brought in some specimens here, and this is with like a really old webcam, so you can see the quality of that is not very great. I only have three things right now. It's actually just propped on top of something. You should totally see the setup right now. It's like on the ground, like right there. Isn't that cool? Like when you see it on the screen, it doesn't look anything like that, but it's just really some weights and propped on top. And my question here is that I only have three things in there. I do have others, but there's one that I didn't really want to open unless it's dissection time because it's gonna be pretty smelly because it's some mussels. And so what I have here is that if you can see from the screen, we have a rat, we have a frog, and we have a earthworm. And here's just three samples of life on Earth, right? And it's funny, when I was doing this, there was like a little bug that crawl over or around, and I was gonna attach that, but I think the bug sort of left. But really, the question here is that if you were to be like a naturalist and a biologist and you're studying life and everything else, how would you classify it, right? Like that's the question, is that how would you sort of organize the life that we have, right? Like if you think about science in a way, it's all about trying to provide that facts, provide sort of a concise way for people to know what's out there in our natural world, right? Whether you're studying say like physics, which is really just like the motions or the laws that happen on Earth, in our universe, and etc. And also the chemistry is really looking at sort of at the atomic level, how things combine, react, and all of that, right? That's science. So if you're a biologist, then you're looking at life, right? Like everything that has life form. So anything that will reproduce, will need energy, will consume for energy or get energy from somewhere. Things like that, right? So then how would you classify, like if we have three things? That's what we're going to look into right now. So like, you know that I've traveled to some countries and lived elsewhere, and a lot of during my travels is that like it's not going to be as extensive as like Charles Darwin and all of that. But like I remember going to different places and witnessing different sort of life forms that exist in different places. It makes me wonder, like, how do we classify life? Because it's such a vast amount of life that we have, and they're so different, right? So we're going to talk about how life is organized, and we're gonna look at into oh, I just read your message, like Aristotle's way and Linnaeus's way, and then the modern method. So like all these people we've talked about from evolution, and then we'll sort of jump into the domains and kingdoms. That's when you have to look at sort of like the how different organisms are classified in different branches, and we'll talk about that. And then what is a species, and then arranging a cladogram. So if you were to look at some of the pictures I've taken here, like the first one is they have a sort of a, well, this is not even a praying mantis. I don't even know why I put a praying mantis here, but I saw this one when I was in Ghana at a bus station, and it looks pretty small here in this picture, but like this organism was like this big, so it's about like 4 or 5 inches. And I did have a video of that, but like that's a pretty cool thing. And if you remember some of the other pictures I've taken of other organisms, like there's such a vast sort of yeah, Owen, you probably would know this more than I do, to be honest. So totally, we can look that up. But like I remember seeing all this stuff. Like this is in Africa, so like there's this one, and I remember even going on driving into like the countryside of Ghana, and I remember seeing some. I don't remember if I don't know if they're gorillas or what, but like they're on the side of the road, and there's that, and there's. When I lived in Malaysia, I had this a fish tank with all the corals and all of that. So that's another one, like really different sort of life in saltwater. And there's like these proboscis monkeys with like these big noses on a separate island on Malaysia as well. I remember there's one time walking to school in Malaysia, and there was a monitor lizard. So these are like your Komodo dragons, but like they're not. They can't really kill you with their tongue, but they're massive. They're like 9 feet long, lizards just roaming on the streets. Right? It's really crazy. Like to think that these are the wildlife. Like for me as sort of like a foreigner to live in Malaysia and see that, it's like, whoa, this is crazy. Like you see a monitor lizard that size. Whereas if people were to come to Canada and see like, oh, there's like, hey, there's bunnies around or hares or right running around. There's deer, right? And then there's, like raccoons or like coyotes. Like that could be kind of startling to some people too, right? But like to think about different places, different regions of the world to have different wildlife, I think it's pretty neat. So if we were to think back into our evolution and how we classify things, right? This really started with Aristotle, and he really just kind of organized it. If you think about all the life that exists, right, like human beings, dogs and cats and all that stuff, and then you have insects, right, it's really easy to think that maybe we'll just classify as in red-blooded or not red-blooded, or not have any blood at all. So if you were to go outside today, see bugs like ladybugs or like flies, they don't have blood, right? So then let's classify them as in one section, and then all of the things that have blood, another section. And then eventually you'll branch off more and more, so then this becomes like a branch to classify the organism, right? But as you can see that when you classify like this, you don't really have that evolutionary perspective. That means that when you classify just like red blood to no red blood, you can't see that sort of evolutionary progression, right? You can have plants and not plants, like mammals or whatever, right? So then you can't see that there was a progression of that evolutionary progression across time. So that was a limitation to Aristotle's method to classify it as blood and bloodless. And also some of them actually don't fit into this category because some of them might straddle both of them, or some just simply don't belong into either one of them. Even like back then they don't know anything about bacteria or microorganisms, right? So like that's something that is a limitation. So moving on from this, Linnaeus, if you remember Linnaeus, he was the one who said that whatever part you use, you will pass it on to your next generation, right? Like giraffes, if you continue stretching your neck for leaves, then you'll continue growing your neck, and then your neck will get bigger, right? So and then once your neck gets longer, then you'll pass it on to your next generation, and then you'll continue, right? Maybe I'll just take this picture of the rat off. There you go. So then Linnaeus classified it into more like a systemic way, and he looked at the characteristics and looked at the behavior of the animals, and he developed this sort of hierarchical structure based on the animals. So this is what he did, and this is something that you should really know as well. And this classification system is it's not like the best way, but it does give you that hierarchy. And now, like for in our modern day, there's a lot of sort of variation in this system as well. So if you look at his system, he broke it down into a big picture and then narrow it down into the more specific traits. So the most inclusive one that for him was called kingdom. And sometimes you might hear like the kingdom, and the kingdom is the most inclusive one. And what it is that this kingdom will get broken down into more specific traits called phylum, and then that will get broken more into traits into class and then order and family, genus, and then finally the species, which we always hear is the most specific. Okay, so you want to know how to remember this, like kingdom, phylum, class, order, and then family, genus, and species. And one really good way of doing this is that if you look at the first letter of each of these ones, and there's so many other ways of remembering this. One more of a school appropriate way is King Philip came over for good spaghetti. I know it sounds kind of boring, but it worked for me. And if you're creative and clever, I know like if you search this up, there are some other ways that will sort of get you to remember this as well. It's really up to how you guys want to remember it. But like King Philip came over for good spaghetti is a way for me to remember it. I know that King starts with a K, that's kingdom, and then Philip is P, etc., etc., etc. Right? So if you look at this one, so here you have the kingdom Animalia. So this is all about all the animals, and as you break this down, then you have to find chordata. So chordata is the one where you have sort of like the spinal cord, your vertebrae. And then it breaks it down and says, hey, what about these ones that are just mammals, right? So you notice the snake gets left out. This is all about the mammals. So they have the mammalian glands. And then gets further broken down about like, hey, well, this squirrel doesn't eat meat, so gets left out. So then all these ones are carnivora. So then they get included in the order. And then the bear family, Ursidae, gets included. The fox is left out. And then Ursus, and eventually you have your polar bear, which is your Ursus arctos. Okay, so that's your, or grizzly bear, sorry. And that's your species. So what Linnaeus also included was something called binomial nomenclature, which is just a fancy name of saying two names, naming system. And what it is that when you see or hear about the scientific name of something, that's where that is from. That's your binomial nomenclature. So if you look at Ursus americanus, that's really the common name is black bear. So if you see a black bear, it's a black bear. But the scientific name is Ursus americanus. So this, you can see, describes which genus is from, which is your Ursus, and americanus is the species name. So here's a couple of details that you have to remember. Number one is that right here it says that this Ursus americanus, they're always italicized. So whenever you type this up, whenever you see it, it's always italicized. So if you were to Google black bear, and on the Wikipedia on Google, the scientific name is always going to be italicized. Second thing is that the genus is going to be your the first letter is going to be capitalized, and your species first letter is not capitalized. So that's another one. So when you look at this one, you can see that this letter is capitalized and this is not capitalized. So that's the correct method of writing this. If you were to write this and if you put an uppercase A, that is incorrect. That is not right. Or if you did not italicize that, that is not correct either. Or if you left this to a lowercase u, that's not correct either. So if you were to look at this one, right, Egyptian vulture, here's an example. If you were to Google this, your scientific name is going to look like this. So again, this is a fancy, mostly Latin name, but notice that it's italicized and has a capital letter N for the first genus, and then the species letters for all of these ones are not capitalized. So even for the third one, this is bacterium for tuberculosis, right? That's a bacteria, but there is a scientific name for it, and it's Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And you notice that the first letter of the species is not capitalized. So that's your binomial nomenclature, okay? So then as we move away from Linnaeus, then we wanted to involve like an evolutionary relationship. So then we added the domain in addition to the kingdom. So the domain actually include a more broad sort of picture, but they're separate from this. So like this is where you include something called a bacteria, because bacteria doesn't really play a part into like animals and insects and plants and all that, because their cellular structure is just so fundamentally different. So they're in its separate domain. And then eukaryota is the one that is about the eukaryote. So this is your animal cells. So this is basically your animal cells. I'll have a slide of this after. But this is really just your animal cells. This is all your bacteria cells. And archaea, this one is more of the category that doesn't fit into either one. So we're going to look at these extreme sort of bacteria in this when we get into the domain. So we're going to go into each of these in detail. Okay, so let's look at the first method of organizing organisms or biodiversity here. So the first thing is called a dichotomous key, and you probably just got a notification for an assignment about this. So this is a dichotomous key. What a dichotomous key basically is like a template, is a key, not like a physical key, but like a key to tell you, like a legend to tell you, if you were to have this characteristics, what would it have as your species? Or if you were to look at like these four birds, right, they all exemplify different traits, right? Bigger beak, rounder beak, sharper beak, smaller sort of stunted beak, whatever, right? But when you take these characteristics and put into your dichotomous key, you can actually figure out what sort of species or what kind of bird it is, right? So if you look at this, the first question is just a series of questions. The beak is relatively long and slender, or the beak is relatively stout and heavy. So if you were to identify this bird W, which one would you choose? Was it A or B? Well, I think this one is relatively long and slender, so it seems like it's this one. So bird W is this bird. Let's look at this one then. Bird X. If we were to look at bird X, is this beak relatively long? It's not, but it is relatively stout and heavy. So I'm going to go to number 2. So then if I go to number 2, the next step, the bottom surface of the lower beak is flat and straight, or the bottom surface of the lower beak is curved. So what do you think about this? Is it bottom beak, is it flat and straight, or is it curved? Well, it looks like it's curved right here. So I'm going to go to number 3. The lower edge of the upper beak has a distinct bend, or is it mostly flat? It seems like it's maybe mostly flat, I guess. So then it would be this one. And of course, like the better, it's not a perfect system, as you can tell, because it all depends on how you interpret it. But this is one way of identifying and separating your organisms. So here's probably a better picture of this one. And if you look at most organisms, let's just say that I'm thinking of a rat, for example. So then if you go down this sort of this branch, well, does the rat have fur? Yes, it has fur, so the rat is a mammal. If I were to think about like the frog that I had, well, it doesn't have fur. Okay, so let's go to the next branch. Does it have feathers or not? No feathers. So no feathers. I'm going to go down to the next branch. This is like, you know, NCAA sort of bracket kind of thing. Does it have external fertilization or internal? It has external fertilization, sorry. And then it's going to break it down into gills or no gills. No gills. And then that leads to my amphibian. Okay, so that's a dichotomous key into the two different ways. Any questions about this? Okay. The next way of classifying is that you're going to have something called a cladogram. And at any time if you have a question, just let me know, okay? Cladogram, basically, it's like a picture, a diagram picture that breaks it off into like a tree branch. So you have like the main branch and it branches off into different things called clades. And as you can see for this one, how you draw and interpret this cladogram is that you start off from the bottom, and this is right here is your main branch. And right here, that this little tick is your vertebrate. That means that everything after this tick is a vertebrate. Okay, so as you go up this sort of evolutionary chain and then say like, oh, now this branches off into this clade called sharks, right here, this shark has a vertebrae, but it does not have the next sort of tick, which is your bony skeleton, because now as we classify and separate these sort of different organisms, your shark only has a vertebrae. But then as we move on into the evolutionary chain, it gets a little bit more specific, right? So then what if we have a bony skeleton? Well, a lot of fish have bony skeleton. So it does have, number one, a vertebrae. Number two, bony skeleton, okay? Well, what about if you were to have a frog? They have a vertebrae, they have a bony skeleton, but they also have 4 limbs. So let's have another tick. So your 4 limbs right here, you branch it off into amphibians. So if you think about a frog, it has a vertebrae, bony skeleton, and 4 limbs. Man, I'm making a mess over here. Let me erase all this. The next one here is then amniotic egg. And then, so then once you have this, everything again after this will have amniotic egg. But now, well, you can still have organisms that have all of these traits, but are different, such as, well, I have one that has hair and one that with eggs and shell. So then you can branch off these ones further, so that one side has these primates and rodents and rabbits will just have hair, and then crocodiles don't have hair, so they belong into the separate sort of branch. So if you look at a cladogram, it's an evolutionary perspective or development, and starting from the bottom, your vertebrae includes all of this. And then as you go down into this evolutionary sort of progression, it becomes more specific. So birds, what kind of traits would birds have? It would have a vertebrae, it would have a bony skeleton, it has 4 limbs, the wings and the legs. Amniotic egg, it has an egg, and then now their eggs are protected with a shell. Okay, whereas your primates and rodents and rabbits don't, because they're internal. So that's the separation, but then this is the traits that it would have. Okay, that's your cladogram. Here's another example. So again, the most basic traits are at the bottom. And this is, again, very, very simple cladogram, because we're only looking at these big traits. If you think about all these animals, it becomes a lot more specific, right? So then if you were to look at all these ones, that's your cladogram, okay? Eric, your assignment, you will have to use a written one and a picture one. So you have to do both. So let me talk about that assignment after this, okay? So here's, I guess right now, try out the Dichotomous Key and exercise. So what I have posted into your OneNote as well is this Dichotomous Key. So here's an example of a more for a comprehensive Dichotomous Key here. So this is the example. Your assignment requires you to do a written one and a graphical form. And so if you were to create a Dichotomous Key for these following organisms, you notice that some of them are plants, some of them are just like non-living. I don't know, right? Non-living things. Some of them are mammals and flowers, bacteria or single-cell organisms, whatnot, right? So your dichotomous key is I can't pronounce that word. If you were to give your dichotomous key to somebody, they should be able to use your dichotomous key and identify organisms. Okay, so it should be transferable to anybody. So if you were to look at this example, let's just say I have a dandelion. Okay, I see a dandelion in front of me, but I don't know what it is. So then I'm going to use this key to help me identify it, right? So I'm going to take this and say, well, is the dandelion, is the thing I'm looking at living or non-living? Well, it is living, so I'm going to go to number 4. Number 4, is it microscopic or macroscopic? It is a macroscopic, something I can see, so I'm going to go to number 5. Next one is that organism a plant or an animal? It looks like a plant, so I'm going to go to number 6. Number 6 is a plant that has a woody stem, or does it have a herbaceous stem? It does not have a woody stem, so it is in fact a dandelion. So you notice that this key, like this dichotomous key, helped me identify my organism to be a dandelion. Okay, and it's called a dichotomous key is because it's either or, yes or no, or this or that. That's why it's called dichotomous, and it's a key because it tells you by going through this what it is. If I were to take another organism, right? Let's take a bicycle. Let's see if this helps. Bicycle, is it a? Let me just kind of use blue. It's a non-living. Okay, so I'm going to go to number 2. Is it metallic or non-metallic? I think it's a metallic. So I go to 3. Does it have wheels or not have wheels? It does have wheels. It's a bicycle. Just like that, it has helped me identify that it is a bike. So that's what a dichotomous key is. You can, so this is the written form. The graphical form is like this. So this is more the graphical form in branches. So you're basically doing sort of like this, but in branches. Is it living, non-living, metallic, non-metallic, metallic, and eventually you break it down into whatever organism you're trying to identify. Okay, so that's really what a dichotomous key is. It's actually kind of fun when you make one because your assignment for today, just for this one, is a sort of a fun one. So you do have to be pretty creative about this. So what you're going to do is that you're going to create a written and a graphical dichotomous key for the following celebrities. So for the celebrities, really, they all have done many different things. So you have Brad Pitt, Jennifer Lawrence, Zac Efron, Katy Perry, Jackie Chan, Batman, Eminem, Rihanna, Drake, Justin Timberlake, Forrest Whitaker, Selena Gomez, and Jared Leto. And what you have to do is that if somebody were to not know any of these celebrities, say I don't know who Jared Leto is, but if I were to use your dichotomous key, I should be able to identify who he is based on what he has done or the traits or characteristics that he has. Okay, same for Eminem. If you were to see somebody doesn't know who Eminem is, you give them your dichotomous key, either the written form or the graphical form, and go through the dichotomous key. Eric totally distracted me. Why is Batman a celebrity? Why is Batman not celebrity? Batman is a great one. This is the fun one. I'm going to give you another one to do on Thursday, but the next one is where you actually have to create your own dichotomous key based on the organisms of your choosing. So last year, some people did like superheroes and create a dichotomous key with that too. So which we'll talk about later. This one is just a very basic one, just to get your hands a little bit, or just to get you understanding how to do a dichotomous key. But that's it, right? So you need. How I verify it is that I'm going to take one of the celebrities and I'm going to go down through your celebrity or your dichotomous key. If it helps you identify who it is, then boom, you got it perfect, right? And I think it's a pretty fun one to do. And that's your dichotomous key. So that's one way to organize biodiversity. So there's a written way and a graphical way. Any questions? Unicorn. We will have to search up an actor for Batman. Well, you can still use Batman. Like Batman has this character. You don't have to use like Ben Affleck or anything. So how would you classify Batman? And like you want to be creative on this. Don't just say like superhero, no superhero. Like I mean, kind of that's kind of boring. Like have fun with this one, right? I think yeah, I think you can totally have fun with this one. Yes, Owen, you will have to just use these celebrities for this assignment. Um, you're gonna get another assignment where you will create your own. That might be with your cladogram, where you're creating your own, but we'll worry about that later. Anything else? I have assigned it right now. I think you guys should have received a notification, but it's due next Tuesday. But we'll sort of get moving. So on Thursday, you'll get another one on cladograms because we do have less time for all this. So like on Thursday, you get another assignment on cladograms, and then yeah. So I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. Yes, Jared Leto was the Joker in one of the Batman movies. Was he? Was he? Oh, was he? I don't remember. No, you're using Batman as the Batman character, not not the actor. So like, we'll use Batman as Batman. Sure, you can use Christian Bale as Batman, but just use Batman, like Batman as the superhero character, not the celebrities playing Batman. What else? Yeah, so I think it's pretty fun. Well, this is the next one when we talk about the domains. Yeah, we'll talk about cladograms next. Seriously, some of the ones that I got last year was really interesting with the superheroes, and some people did like social media icons and how to like separate what kind of platform that you have. So they used like all the social media platforms and then did a Dichotomous Key or Cladogram with that. It was really cool. Oh, Suicide Squad. That's right. Yeah. That's right. That was a great movie. Cool. All right. Is there anything else? Yeah, I think you guys can totally finish this assignment today. If you guys can, that'll be great. And hopefully you guys are having a great day. I think today is going to be the warmest day of the week. I'm going to get out there and get some fresh air. I think one of these assignments I'm going to get you guys to just like go out and find some life in your neighborhood. Identify some trees, dig up some worms or bugs. I think that'll be fun. Okay, if there's nothing else, then I'll see you on Thursday. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for waking up. If you haven't told me if you're here in the live stream, let me know so that I can write it down to teams of who were here as an attendee. Okay. Thanks. Okay, see you guys. Have a great day. Bye.